Hello, today we are with Michel Bauwens. He is the beginner, he's founder of P2P Foundation, and he will introduce himself first. That's better. And now today we are interviewing at Devcon SEA in Bangkok with Michel. Thank you so much for accepting our interview.
Well, I live in Chiang Mai, northern Thailand, where I met you and your friend at 4seas.io, which is a network nation for Chinese language people in Ethereum. And I'm a big fan of Cash, Web3 and Cash, so I think you're doing great things there. And I look forward maybe to be at Cash next October. And maybe what I'd like to talk about is a course that I'm giving that I might give there. We'll see if we can agree on that. But so it's basically a course that looks at the whole of history of humanity from the point of view of the commons. So we have markets and states that everybody knows, but actually since the 16th century, we've been repressing the commons. And the commons are basically local people with shared resources who want to preserve their environment in the long term. So like mountain flanks in Switzerland and Austria, fishing commons and those kind of things. But now they came back with the digital. So now we have DAOs, which are basically knowledge commons, protocol commons, right? That have open source, that have community, and that can integrate market activities, relationships with public authorities, voluntary work, permissionless contributions. So we're kind of creating this meta container. I call it organized networks with commons as something that is stronger than states and corporations. And so what I'm doing in this course is actually historicizing that, right? So basically I argue there's a 5,000 year shift. So we went from tribal and kinship based, where you know your neighbors, your uncles, your aunts, and you're in a loved environment basically. You know and trust everyone. To civilization where you might be a slave, you might be a domestic worker, you might do the same job day in day out in a factory for nothing. A lot of things that are not so nice in civilization. Of course, also a lot of things that are nice in civilization. But now I think we're making this shift where we reintegrate the commons in the world picture. And why is that necessary? Because in modernity, it's the state that regulates the markets, but now transfinancial capital has escaped, right? And the only way we can do this would be to create a world government again, but that's not a good idea. So instead of having a world government to regulate markets, we need to actually have the commons. Multi-stakeholder aligned groups that can defend certain resources and are strong enough as a counterpower to markets and states. And so, I kind of explain based on macro historians, people like Oswald Spengler, The Decline of the West, Arnold Toynbee, The Study of History, Joseph Campbell, Jean Gebser. I mean, most of the people don't know all these people, but they're really interesting because they identify patterns in history and cycles, and these are recurring. And of course, it's never the same. So, this transition
looks like same. Like first printed coin in from Lydians, and they create at the Lydians like states, pre-confederation and confederation system, like it's like example of pro-democracy. Now we are seeing same things, like 2008 Bitcoin, and I want to mention he has a first tweet about Bitcoin and Satoshi Nakamoto in Twitter, and Satoshi Nakamoto launched a white paper in this forum, right? And now we are talking about DAOs, commons, and network states.
Yeah. So in a way, it's like we're bringing back what we lost 5,000 years ago, right? But instead of kinship-based tribes, we're now building kind of like affinity-based tribes, where we have a common social object, something we want to build together, right? And so we all align around the construction of something new, and that creates a tribe, in a way, right? Yeah. Where again, you can know people, you can trust them. For example, you look at Linux, the alternative open source operating system. The average team in Linux is only 4 or 5 people, and yet they're like 25,000, or I don't know how many now. But and they all work together in a kind of coordinated way. But yet, if you go down to it, they're all small teams. And I don't know if you know that, but collective intelligence researchers, they've determined that 7 people. Each time you add somebody up to 7, you increase collective intelligence. After the 8th person, you actually decrease it, because then you have more and more coordination costs, right? And you also may be aware of the Dunbar number, which is our brain is designed to trust 150 people. So and that's what basically digital networks allow us to do, to scale, and at the same time to remain in small groups.
Yeah, digital revolution is also helping creating for these systems, because I remember in my village I can see like a lot of common examples.
Yeah.
In villages it's possible.
Yeah.
And you mentioned last year about some Lebanese group in.
I visited the Maronite Christian community in northern Lebanon, and so they have their own water commons outside of the state. You know, they do it by themselves. They basically have a lot of solidarity. So the rich people in the Maronites, so usually, you know, like for one person in Lebanon, there are 2 people outside of Lebanon, right? And they're pretty good traders, right? So these billionaires then build social housing for the poor in their community. So there's a lot of solidarity, and that's really good to see, because the problem with the state is when you do welfare, which is of course very good in some ways for, you know, if you're starving and jobless, but the thing is that the state atomizes people, right? You get it from above, and so you actually don't need to have solidarity with your neighbors anymore, right? And that's an unfortunate byproduct of welfare states, is that it really separates people. And I think now we can do what I call cosmolocalism, right? So everything that's heavy is local, and everything that's light is global and shared. So you have, let's say, a distributed manufacturing company locally that has global designs that works together with all the other companies doing the same thing everywhere in the world, right? And so every innovation anywhere in the node is available for the whole network. And so you can be local, which normally would mean like slow, very slow innovation, because people locally don't, you know, they're fine.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily want to learn new things. But when you combine both, you can be fine, right, and happy locally, really embedded in your environment. At the same time, you get this infusion of global knowledge, right? And we're going to need it, because we're going to have, I think, very wild times in terms of climate change, resource shortages. So you want to be very resilient, and you know about accelerationism. But this is like true accelerationism, like accelerating resilience, right?
Yeah, and I want to mention, like before, maybe it was not possible before this digital revolution, before blockchain or Web3 or something. We can see like a lot of commons in the village, maybe big families, maybe big groups in local.
Right.
But you can't, maybe you couldn't scale to state or to global.
That's a new thing.
Yeah,
that's a new thing.
And maybe people wanted, but when they want to scale to states, they couldn't.
So the problem is
they had no chance to.
Exactly. So you live in a small village. Anything that's bigger than you is stronger than you, right? So you can't
defend yourself from the state.
Exactly. So in order to scale, we needed hierarchy to bring down coordination costs. Now we can do high level coordination without hierarchy. And that's amazing. That means that we can scale the commons, we can scale gifting, we can scale conviviality, and we don't have to abandon all the advantages of market and states. We can embed them in a cosmic commons, if you like, right? A cosmolocal commons. And the challenge is to marry differentialism, so the desire of people to be really local, to defend their culture, you know, like they do pretty well in Thailand, as you have experienced, but at the same time, to have the strength, right? And to be universal also, because we also have to care for the whole planet, right? We need to combine these levels in a new way, and civilization hasn't been able to do that. So it's a post-civilizational order that we're building, because civilization is geographic, it's relation between the rural and the urban, and now we're creating trans-local self-organization. And that's unique in the history of the world.
Yeah, it's a new chance, new area.
Yeah. And so let me finish with this maybe, because this is important for where you come from, right? So Kojin Karatani, a Japanese philosopher, has written a book called Isonomia, right? And he says, okay, if you look at Athens, it was a tribal confederation with an oligarchy. Yeah. And when they started asking too much interest on money, the poor revolted and created democracy. The democracy and oligarchy are kind of like connected always.
Yes.
It's always like a balance, and always oligarchy tends to win out in the end, right? In Isonomia, in Ionia, it wasn't like that. It was people who had fled Greece, came as equals in a place, and could leave whenever they wanted, right? And so it's forking, right? It was based on forking, freedom based on forking, which obliges every city in Ionia to be competitive, to be friendly, otherwise people would leave. And you can see Web3 is isonomic, right?
Yes.
It's all based on that. You can go in a DAO, you can leave the DAO. So this is a very interesting and exciting period in human history.
Yeah.
And very happy
we have a chance to do that this time, first time in this time.
Yeah, you're the generation, right? Young people today, I know they complain a lot because the word that we left you is not a good one in many ways. But it also means that you'll have to invent a new one. Yeah. And that in a way is very exciting, right? Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. We hope we will see in Cash also for this.
To see you in Cash. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.